Chris Scalzo here with
Matt Howell.
And in this episode of The First Run, we're going to discuss possibly the greatest double feature of the history of this show. First up, it's going to be the live-action adaptation of the animated Disney classic Mulan. Matt, a film I've never seen. I've never seen the animated version of that, so... Have you ever seen the original Mulan? I'm assuming with
I
a
have.
kid.
Yeah, I have. I have seen it before, but it's not like it's a favorite in our house.
All right, I'll be curious to get that feedback. Initially, Matt, part of Disney Plus's premium service, basically, right, where you had to pay an extra $30 on top of that required membership, but we're a podcast of the people. So we decided to wait until it hit the general public of Disney Plus subscribers. So was it worth the wait, or were we smart to pocket those $30 for other more inappropriate expenses? Now we take a sharp left and turn into the green inferno that is Ruggero Deodato's Cannibal Holocaust as our band marathon continues. And this may be the cherry on the top of this hellish Sunday of a year. We're talking like week-old ground beef, Matt, maybe a banana peel, some hot dog water, and a worn-out tennis shoe on this Sunday. Is there a moral message, though, Matt, to kind of for us to hang on to mix further metaphors, like a raft in this just tsunami of horrible? There's a super tight rundown of the big releases of physical media featuring your straight-to-DVD and streaming picks of the week. Plus, in the end, Matt and I are going to share the 5 films we're most looking forward to in 2021 that weren't part of the 5 films that got away that we did the other week. But let's start everything off with a clip from Mulan.
You're a witch, am I? And who are you?
I'm Hua Jun, soldier in the Emperor's Imperial Army.
Liar. Your deceit weakens you. It poisons your chi.
Man, I hate nothing more than having a poisoned chi. So, Matt, why don't you tell the fine folks at home, what is this brand spanking new live-action version of Mulan all about?
Sure. It is the retelling of Hua Mulan, the woman warrior, an ancient Chinese folktale about a young woman who comes from a family who has no males in it except for her father, who is old and infirm. And they get called to war to defend off barbarians that are attacking the Chinese Empire. And she dresses up like a man in order to take her father's place and not to bring shame to the family.
You know, you'll have to pardon my white ignorance. I had no idea until researching it that this was actually based on a Chinese folktale. But I should have known, because Disney doesn't really have any original ideas. So...
Not ones that usually work out too well.
Yeah, it's interesting. All right. So, Matt, let me ask you about Mulan. Was this an upgrade? Did this improve upon the animated film? Was it great to see this on the live-action screen? Or is this like another Lion King remake, which wasn't really live-action either?
Yeah, so like I said at the beginning, Mulan was never a high watermark favorite. This was Mulan came out at like the tail end of that kind of second renaissance of Disney films where you had Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Lion King. And this, I think, was the first release right after The Lion King. So it was a definite mark drop in quality. And this is kind of really where you start to see, the traditional Disney animation kind of give way to Pixar and kind of what they're doing. The animated film had a lot of the normal hallmarks. It had some songs in it. It had Eddie Murphy as an anthropomorphized little Chinese dragon to giving comedy relief. And all of that stuff is missing from this. So, and I think there was, when this came out, a vocal group of critics of people who really liked the first one and was lamenting all of those things that were missing. Like, in the other live action remakes, whether they're Beauty and the Beast or The Lion King, a lot of those things, like the songs, stayed in place, whereas that did not happen for this. And I guess the question was the reasoning to try to get more money out of China, obviously pay maybe more serious tribute to a very important folk legend in their culture? I don't know. But I can tell you this. Whatever reasons they decided to do that, whether it's better or worse, I can't really say because I didn't really love the original Mulan. but this is an ultimately mediocre, kind of boring in its competence, run by numbers adventure story. Bloodless action. Other than the fact that you have a woman leading this thing from an adventure standpoint, everything else about it is really particularly unexceptional. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm inclined to agree with you. I think it's a great moment, I think, for representation of Asian actors. Right? We didn't whitewash any of this, though. I'm fairly confident ScarJo could easily have played Mulan in this movie if she really wanted to.
I mean, Emma Stone's proven herself. So.
That's true. That's very, very true. But yeah, I think that though I think the film has a great message per se, it's a very slight film. It's built to entertain, which it does, but it's purely confectionery sugar. It has a great use of color, which I think is used to honor the film's animated roots, kind of these deep, lush, but very large kind of swaths of color that occur throughout the film. And I think, too, it was smart to jettison the songs in that lighter, family-oriented feel. Though it does still have but it's not as happy. It tries to take a more serious tone, which I agree, I think is more to honor the actual story that it's based on and not basically just bring this animated film to life. And I think that was the right decision. I did agree, though, I think, with the other main villain in this film, the witch, right? And I think in the end, she provides one of the more tempting dark side turns I've seen in a film. Because I'm watching this, I'm like, rise up against the patriarchy, sister. I'm with you, And I think in the end, it may be a little to the film's detriment because it's still, even though I think it was maybe the strongest part of the film, it's not explored really as well as I wish it would have been. But in the end, it's because we fall to the core problem of this film, and it's something you mentioned. And it's really starting to show up to me with these films too, is that Disney movies are really starting to feel like assembly line productions to me. Right? We do these different points. Slot A goes with, part one, and we just have to hit these moments, and then we just churn out the next product for the audience. And that's what Mulan screams to me. And I feel that really in the end, Disney Plus on the small screen was the appropriate launch for this thing. Mm-hmm. That it has that feel of it to me. And I'm wondering, Matt, is this the future? I know we've been toying with this for years now. And we were all cautiously excited about Disney buying Fox because of getting a hold of the Fantastic Four and the X-Men. But they've really, this is just a factory at this point. I think. I think I don't know. Are we past a point of return on this? Is there plans of doing like a naughty version of like a Touchstone channel or something like that, where they can do a Deadpool film and all of that? Or are we just assembly line going to be churning out content at this point, and we're just going to get Mulans going forward?
Part of me thinks that I see what you're saying, but I feel like saying that kind of blind yourself to what Disney's been doing for the past 40 years anyway. I mean, at its heart, Disney makes films for children and tweens and maybe young adults. They know that formula that gets kids in the seat, and they try and push that forward out. Disney's always made kind of like straight to video properties of their, bigger properties. I can't even tell you how many different Aladdins there were. Right. So this is not outside of their wheelhouse. I think what it makes it weird for people like us is that, they've had just so much product. They kind of acquired two of the biggest nerd franchises in the world, really. And Marvel's kind of still doing its own thing, and it's still producing the way it always has produced. And whatever your criticisms are of Marvel, those have been the same since day one, basically. And Star Wars, they've really, for the most part, I would argue they've messed up, especially at least from a theatrical release standpoint. But it's weird. We kind of give Disney this kind of dual message, right? Like, we want something new, but almost only to a point, right? And it's like they're trying to balance these two opposing forces. I'll use Star Wars as an example. People complained about The Force Awakens because it was just retelling of A New Hope, right? Mm-hmm. Basically, they give you The Last Jedi, and people freak out because it's too far over to the other side. Now, some people like yourself really like The Last Jedi. Some people really hate it, and then there's some people like me who are kind of in the middle. There are parts of it that I don't like, but they then go back and overcorrect, and you get this final Star Wars film, which is, as I keep getting further away from it, it's just garbage. It's just so bad that it's just really frustrating to me. So it's really, they're taking these properties and they're trying to figure this stuff out. And I think what I'm worried about is that with Mulan, what Disney's going to take away from all this is that Beauty and the Beast was just basically, animated, redone. That was a huge hit. Lion King was just animated, redone. That was a big hit as well. We tried to do something different with Mulan. It failed. So let's not try to do that again. And at the end of the day, like we've said it, or I've said it many times on the show, this is show business. And if these things don't make money, they're going to do what they have to do to make money. But I have faith, maybe it's weird now because of what 2020 has brought us and just everything else, that this seems to have slowed what Disney's planning on doing with all these acquired properties. But I have faith that they will, even if it has to be like a separate entity like Touchstone, they'll still produce more nuanced films. But I think anything under that Disney umbrella, I think you're going to get kind of the same thing that you've been getting since Snow White came out. And that's just the way Disney is.
I don't know. I mean, they did stuff like Something Wicked This Way Comes, which is one of my favorite old school Disney movies, right? You have the Black Hole, Fantasia.
But none of those made money. That's the problem. None of those made money. I mean, Fantasia is rightly viewed as just groundbreaking and awesome, but the Black Hole is like at best a cult classic. Same thing with this Something Wicked, This is the Way it comes. Think of all the animated films that were released in that time period, like The Rescuers and the Aristocats. Nobody watches those. Nobody talks about those because they're not great. Yeah. So.
Well, I thought The Mandalorian was a good compromise. I think that worked really well in the Star Wars universe. Though I think the second season was better than the first. Yeah. I think it did a good job of balancing the new and the old in regards to the Star Wars audiences.
Right. Well, and I still think they're still feeling everything out. And they're still, again, for the most part, I think people really liked the way that ended up. But there is still a minority, but a vocal minority, that was complaining about that kind of final reveal, that it just kind of gives you more of the same of what you've already seen. And they didn't like that. So I think they're still figuring it out, especially with those kinds of properties. And I think they'll get there, but I would expect there's going to be missteps on the way.
Fair enough. So any final thoughts on the Mulans?
Yeah, like I thought it was okay. I think if you've seen it, for the most part, people have, if you want to watch it. Maybe your kids are going to love it, but I wouldn't expect it to be something that's going to become a classic for, older adults with more sophisticated sensibilities such as we are, before we talk about Cannibal Holocaust.
Indeed.
I would give it a C+ if I was grading it.
I'm right near you. I give it a B-.
Okay.
So I'm not that far off from you. I found enough of it to be entertaining. Like I said, I enjoyed the message of the film, and the acting is fine. Everybody's good in it. Donnie Yun's in it, so I'm always excited to see him. But in the end, it's nothing. It's gossamer. There's nothing really there. So if you get a chance to see Mulan, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. Man, Matt, there is nothing coming out on physical media this week. This is going to be a super short segment. So all the people that hate this part of the show, you're going to be very excited. Let's spend about 2 minutes and talk about what's coming up on the physical media this upcoming Tuesday.
What took so long? Did you find it?
We did. Right where you said it'd be. Let's have a chat.
So, do we have a deal?
I hear you're a Marine. How many times you ship out?
Quite a few, actually.
Guess that makes you kind of dangerous, huh?
What's with the gloves? Whoa, hey.
Pick it up.
I'm turning myself in.
I said pick it up.
This isn't what we talked about.
Did you count it? The cash. Did you count it?
What would have happened if I counted it?
When you got to 3 million, you would have run out of money.
Bullshit.
Figured I might need a bargaining chip. Seems I was right.
Of course, everybody's favorite senior citizen action star. This is the king of the B-movie actioners these last 15, 20 years, maybe? Liam Neeson is back once again in Honest Thief, featuring probably Matt's favorite actor of the past 20 years, Jay Courtney. Also features one of my favorite people, Jeffrey Donovan, and Robert Patrick is in this as well. Neeson plays a bank robber who tries to turn himself in because he's fallen in love and wants to live an honest life, then realizes other feds are even more corrupt than he is. He must fight back to clear his name. Matt, I'm going to watch this. I love me some Neeson. You give me some Jeffrey Donovan and Robert Patrick as well. Bank robber, thriller, actioner. I'm in.
Every day, every week that we do this show, and every single day I interact with you, you're moving closer and closer to a dad. You may not be technically a dad. You're, you have a dog, but
yeah,
you're moving closer and closer to a dad. I'm waiting for you to start really reading some Tom Clancy books or something.
I've started reading the Jack Reacher books. Does that count?
Yeah, that counts. Oh, that counts.
Lee Child, that's who I was looking for. That's who I was stretching for. Also coming out on December 29th is The Last Shift, featuring Richard Jenkins. Stanley's last shift at his fast food job takes an unexpected turn. And that's it. Your straight to DVD pick of the week, Matt, is going to be Triggered. 9 friends, each harboring a dark secret, go camping in the woods. After a wild night of partying, they wake up with suicide bombs strapped to their chests, all with varying times on their countdown clocks. They decide to work out how to disarm the bombs or find help until they discover that they can take someone else's time by killing each other. Matt, what should we be streaming this week?
You know what? So this film is getting ready to come out. This episode is coming out on Christmas Day. So you know what? I'm going to do a cop-out. Sit down with your family or your significant other or your pets or even just yourself, because love the one you're with, and pick your favorite holiday film. They're all available on different streaming services. Check them out. Watch a Scrooged. We like it here on the show. The classics of Christmas Vacation are available in different spaces. Hell, my new favorite is Elf, which I highly encourage. Is available on all kinds of streaming platforms. So get down there, watch a Christmas movie, and enjoy yourself.
Very nice. I still have my annual rundown of It's a Wonderful Life coming up soon, so I'm very excited about that.
Very nice.
Okay, kids. Sometimes I think it's to rip the Band-Aid off. Maybe the best way to do it. I don't know. But let's not prolong this anymore. Let's spend a few minutes and talk about Cannibal Holocaust.
Good morning, New York, good morning. Good morning, oh,
You did it, goddammit. You just invited us to dinner. Hey, what?
All right, Matt. So, an American film crew disappears in the Amazon rainforest. They're going there to film a documentary about some indigenous cannibal tribes, and they disappear. So then a rescue team basically goes out to try and find out what happened to them. They end up finding these tapes of what the documentary crew shot, and they bring it back to the States, and now there's this kind of corporation or television production company. They want to release the tapes, and the professor who went to look for the lost kids is trying to convince them, don't do this. Don't release this. You have no idea how horrible what we found it really is. And so we have two kind of things going on, Matt, where we have basically, 3 films happening in this movie, right? So you have the professor on the expedition to try and find out what happened. Then we have him back in the States trying to stop this footage from being released. And then we have the actual footage of the film crew itself. And Matt, this film made me not to want to watch horror films anymore. I don't know if
Really?
I'm like, do I just need to stick to action movies and just watch the John Wick trilogy one more time instead? Now, I'm sure it'll pass, I think, but it is such a disturbing film to watch. And unfortunately, the only version we were able to watch is the one on Shudder, which included the actual killing of animals, which I just fast forward through. As soon as I saw what was about to happen, I just skipped ahead. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I don't have the stomach for that kind of stuff. I unfortunately saw a couple things, like a second of the meerkat, a couple frames of the turtle, which is the most famous, I guess, scene. And there's another one too. It's just, here's the thing where I struggle with this. And maybe it's like exploitation cinema is where I have the biggest problem with, right? So, all right. So what Deodato's trying to do here, I think, is make a grand point about imperialism. So this film crew goes in, and instead of just filming stuff, they actually start interacting with the tribes, but then causing kind of these devastating effects to the tribe. They assault one of the women that are a member of the tribe, which ends up resulting in her ritual sacrifice. They burn down huts, killing people inside them. They shoot people. I mean, they're horrible, horrible people, right? Which, of course, is then representing the domestic, or to the U.S. or whatever, imperialism going into these countries and stripping them for the resources and killing the locals, whatever the case may be. But I think the problem is it's undercut then for me, Matt, by the actual killing of those animals. Right? It almost takes away from the message. Now Deodato becomes the subject of what he's trying to portray as evil. Mm-hmm. Which kind of is an issue for me, right? I think he by becoming the thing he's actually critiquing, I think he neuters, pardon the pun, his own message, right? I think that's really part of the problem with this film, for me at least. What are your thoughts on Cannibal Holocaust? Does its message, air quotes message, help elevate it above its exploitation roots, or does the exploitation magnify its message for you?
That's an interesting question. I will say this. So after I watched this films, I'd actually seen this, in college, X amount of decades ago. I won't even say how many. So I wasn't going into this completely blind, but I hadn't seen it since the first time I had watched it. And after I watched this, I immediately watched kind of the other famous cannibal movie from the same time, another Italian cannibal film called Cannibal Ferox, which is also on Shudder.
You went all in, huh?
I just went straight into it after that. And I will say this, kind of comparing and contrasting the two, Cannibal Holocaust is a much more interesting film because it does, like you said, seem like it has something to say. Whereas Cannibal Ferox is much more of like kind of your straight up exploitation, shock value, just doing it for the gore,
right.
What is it? Giallo type stuff. And there are animal deaths in that as well. But interestingly enough, those animal deaths that you see in Ferox are not committed by anybody on screen. It's usually like a tape of like a jaguar eating a monkey or something like that. It's not like a human killing it or something like that. This has like a certain nastiness to it. And I can see where the director, I think the killing of the animals, while I believe it was completely unnecessary, I think in his mind, he was making a point of it's not really just, the imperialism aspect of it, but the West coming into these places and kind of subjugating nature, kind of taking over, the resources of these places to kind of fit their needs. And they're just being wasteful about it. And I think, they're showing them killing this turtle or the monkey or the pig. The monkey and the pig, I think, were the hardest ones for me. Those things are, they're doing it in a cruel fashion. It's kind of along those same lines of like, these are all the evils things that we're doing to these indigenous societies. And I respect the point that he's trying to make. I just think that his execution is not for everyone, and it's needlessly gratuitous in a lot of ways. I will say, though, that even the deaths in it, the violence in it, that's not real, the stuff that's perpetrated to other people is very effective, and it's not exhilarating. It's not the kind of thing that you see where you talk about other exploitation films in general, or like, let's say, like revenge films, where you enjoy seeing the idea is to get like this kind of comeuppance. That's like kind of, you don't enjoy any part of this, even when they get what they deserve, air quotes.
Yeah.
It's still awful and brutal, and it's not anything that you should be enjoying, which is, I think, is an interesting point to make for a horror film. I think if you know somebody who like really enjoys this film, you really may want to question whether there's somebody you want to hang out with, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting point you make there, because I think if you go look at Italy's history in regards to these budget-friendly horror films, this output, particularly in the 70s and early 80s, they're heavy on gore, light on story and script and performances. But this hits harder. This is heavier. And for all my love of the works of like Argento and Fulci particularly, there is something greater going on in Cannibal Holocaust. But I still find it, the exploitation genre that Deodato uses for this, you're right, really does shine a light on the horrors that man does. It's a particular reason why I've shifted personally to like veganism, right? It's not so much the health side effects, which is a big part of it, but it's a moral choice for me as well, that these animals are sacrificed, not even sacrificed, they're murdered. They suffer. We know that they experience pain and fear and they suffer. And at that point, I can't participate in that anymore. And and having this kind of shoved in my face the way that Deodato does that by employing the exploitation genre, really just, it shook me watching this thing, because you're right, it's the reality of the situation and how this stuff happened and happens, and the way the deaths are portrayed, just as you described, not as a thrill or a rush or a scare where your adrenaline shoots up like you do with your typical horror films. It's just very matter of fact, this is what happens. And it's just, I don't know what to grade this thing, Matt. I don't. I've been sitting on this for 3 days now, and I don't know what to do. It's
right.
Because in the genre and what it's portending to do, what it's portraying to us, I think it's exceptionally effective. I think Deodato nails this thing. But I don't want to reward it by giving it like a B+ or something, right? Because I feel like it's assigning this honorific to it, that it's a film of quality that everybody should, that it's just, and it's not. It's, I don't know. What are you giving it? Have you settled on a score?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess as we're pontificating a lot this episode, I guess I want to just take a step back. I think it's interesting that you said this kind of put the starkness of horror in front of you, and like maybe you want to step back from that. And that's actually a thought that I've been having for a long time. Like a lot of these films that even we've watched for the show, I'm not as interested in human suffering anymore, and especially human suffering that is committed by other people, even if it's supposedly like deserved kind of thing. I'm okay with like monsters or supernatural or like a unstoppable force, like a slasher kind of thing. Like that's more of a supernatural myth kind of thing. But like even like I know you really want to see like Promising Young Woman, but and I hear it's great, but I have little juice to go see like these kind of revenge fantasy kind of things, like and I understand that's not really fair, and I'll end up watching the film anyway, but I'm not excited to go see it because I don't want to see that kind of, and while I don't think it's like necessarily I spit on your grave kind of stuff, I mean that whole that's an example of the entire film that there's nothing about it that's good. I don't know. I would say, I'm going to do a cop out here. I'm going to say that Cannibal Holocaust, as a film, as an experience where he's trying to put something along, like you said, is very effective. And the way he does it in a lot of ways is really, I think, smart. I hesitate to use the word brilliant, but it's smart the way he presents a lot of this stuff. So with that, I'm going to give it, as just in a vacuum of what it is, I would give it probably an A- just on that alone. But if you're talking about is it something that I ever really want to watch again, I would give it a D. Like I didn't enjoy the experience of actually watching it. As much as I didn't enjoy Pink Flamingos, I would watch that again over is.
Oh, yeah, I think Pink Flamingos a much more enjoyable experience for me than this was, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I have that same. I'm running parallel to you, especially with that explanation. Like I had a B plus down there, but I also wanted to give it an F, particularly with the animal harm. I can't abide.
Yeah,
I can't.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not even just the animal harm. You know, you read about how, you know, the indigenous people that they were working with, they ended up eating those animals, so it's not like it went to waste. And that is like their traditional food kind of thing, that kind of hunter-gatherer society. But the problem is it's gratuitous and it's cruel, and it's not like it was done in a humane kind of way. So anyway, I digress. I'm sorry.
No, yeah. So I think that's where I am too. I'm like B plus F, and you're A minus D. So. And one of the more interesting things too, for the uninitiated, if you don't know, is that the film caused quite a stir at the time it was released. So much so that Deodato was arrested, and he was put up for trial because they actually thought that these people died. And he actually had to have like the actors and actresses show up in court to prove that they were still indeed alive. They had signed some deal where they would not appear on film for a year after the film's release to kind of add that air of authenticity. Yeah. And one thing too that I think that we didn't talk about that I think I would like to mention as well is I think where Deodato undercuts himself is how women are portrayed in this film. It is really again, now granted I understand what the time that the thing was filmed in, the attitude towards women, particularly in the exploitation genre, though it sometimes continues to be, was very, very bad. And they are really treated horribly in this film, and he does nothing. There's times where I think I don't want to say he revels in it, but I don't know if there's enough of a loud condemnation of it.
I agree with that. I mean, I would think again, you could argue that he's presenting these things as kind of, not only is it, you know, man's subjugation of mankind as a whole, as human beings, but of, you know, women in particular, but, you know, at the same time, a lot of the critique that you would expect with that doesn't kind of follow through, you know, it's not very surface level. So I agree with you. It seems that it's at the same time, while he seems to be saying these things, it's coming from a place, I think, from a very misogynist place to begin with. And I don't think he necessarily earns what message he's trying to do. I agree with you. A lot of it is pretty, I mean, but we said that about the whole freaking movie. I mean, the whole thing.
Fair enough.
It's just ridiculous. You know what? You want to watch something that's more exploitative, but I would say air quotes fun, go watch Cannibal Ferox. I mean, there is still animal death in that, but it's like a snake eating a capybara and stuff like that. So, I mean, at least that's nature, I guess. I don't know.
Fair enough. And from what I understand, too, just as a side, the Promising Woman is supposed to be more Nightcrawler than it is like I Spit on Your Grave. But
okay.
We'll see.
Yeah. All right, we'll see.
I'm still hopefully going to be seeing that shortly. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, I mean, I want to see it. I like I said, I'm just putting it out there that I'm less inclined to see, especially with everything that's going on and just how messed up everything is in the world. I'm less inclined to see human suffering on film.
I agree with you. I've been leaning that way for a while now, like a year at least, and I wonder how much of it is the current conditions of everything as well. But yeah, I agree with you. I think I may just be aging out of that particular genre of film. So I can't tell you, Matt, how many times the past 20 years I've almost bought this. I almost bought it on VHS when I was younger because I'd heard so much about it. I almost bought it on DVD. I remember clearly being in a Virgin Superstore in New York City, rummaging through some Bowie imports and seeing it. And I'm like, oh, I've always heard of this. I got to get this. I didn't buy it. And again, I think it happened again when it was released on Blu-ray. And I'm glad. I'm glad I didn't do it because, like you said, I will not be revisiting this in any capacity. If you've seen Cannibal Holocaust, go ahead and shoot us an email, I guess. feedback@thefirstrun.com. We'd like to hear from you about this and maybe other things. All right, Matt, let's spend a few minutes to talk about a couple films that we are really looking forward to in 2021.
Fail-safe device. It's unleashed a radioactive cloud.
We can stay here and learn to glow in the dark, or we can go out there and maybe get cut to pieces.
Snake Eyes. We'll try a breakout when he joins us. Come in, Snake Eyes. Acknowledge, Snake Eyes. Acknowledge.
He's lowering a radioactive shield. Get out of there, Snake!
There was no time for him to get out. He knew that when he brought it down to save us.
There's nothing we can do for him. And we can't get at the crystals either. Hey! Look at there!
A way out. It must have opened automatically when Snake Eyes lowered the shield.
Thanks, Nick. So obviously, Matt, this one didn't make my list, but there is a G.I. Joe Snake Eyes movie coming out starring Henry Golding as the titular Snake Eyes. Who else is in this? Iko Uwais is in it. Andrew Koji is Storm Shadow. So it's supposed to be Scarlet is played by Samara Weaving, which we're big fans of. There will be the Baroness as well. So this film is supposed to serve as an origin story for Snake Eyes, one of my favorite cartoon characters of all time, of my youth. So I am looking forward to the Snake Eyes movie.
Yeah, I was not a huge fan of the other G.I. Joe movies, but maybe I will watch this. My initial gut feeling on the trailers dependent.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm not confident. All right, Matt, so I'll go first. I'll give you the ultimate number one. My number 5, then, coming out on February 26th, though, is a film I'm really looking forward to. It was supposed to come out last year, or this year, 2020, excuse me, but is not coming out. I'll get just let's just end the year, please. Let's just get this over with. But it's Nobody by the gentleman who brought us Hardcore Henry. Bob Odenkirk basically does his John Wick turn as a former, just lethal one-man killing machine. He's a mild-mannered family man now. He suffers from PTSD, and one night these two thieves break into his house, and he declines to defend his family. And things just go awry from there. It's one of the more fun trailers I've seen as of late, and I love me some Odenkirk. And seeing him in this role, I think, could be a lot of fun. So I'm going to go with Nobody.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I had forgotten about that. So, I'm really looking forward to seeing that as well. So this will be I think my one big tentpole film, because I think we covered that a lot in the other ones. But I'm going to go ahead and mention The Eternals, which is a Marvel movie that's coming out. And the reason that I'm interested in seeing this particularly is, one, just because I'm always curious to see how Marvel deals with their weirder properties. The Eternals is a weird property, and they had a good track record with Guardians of the Galaxy, so I'm interested to see what they do here. But also because it's being directed by Chloe Zhao, who is the director of the much praised, but we haven't seen it yet, Nomadland. So I'm kind of interested to see this kind of. I think she's only got like 2 or 3 films under her belt, and suddenly she's getting thrown into the deep end of the pool with the Eternals in the Marvel universe. So I'm very curious to see what it's produced with that. It's supposed to come out November 5th.
All right. We'll have to check that out then. My number 4, I'm going to ask you a question, Matt, and maybe we're going to have to pocket this for next week.
Okay.
I didn't even bring it up last week because I just knew I was going to be just totally upset about it. So have you seen One Cut of the Dead yet?
No, I haven't.
You swore to me.
Shit. I know I did. I did. I said to myself, man, I need to watch that because I know I'm going to record on the show tomorrow. Chris is going to ask me. We agreed that we were going to do this, but here's the problem, Chris. And this is my own failing. It's subtitled. It's in Japanese. So it's not like, and I'm a busy man, especially this time of year. It's not like you can be distracted at all. I have to sit and watch it so I know what the hell's going on. So it requires a real commitment from me. It's not like Top Gun where you could like pause it and go back and listen to Tom Cruise play volleyball and know what's going on. So that's really the only thing that's held me back from watching it. It's just finding the time to actually sit and commit to doing it.
And particularly with One Cut of the Dead, you need to, because there's a lot of things that happen that you have to pay attention to the film. So I guess I have to respect that, even though I am disappointed, because I upheld my end of the bargain.
You did.
And watched Top Gun.
Talk about that. Can we talk about it maybe after this is over?
Sure.
Yeah.
But that leads me into, though, my number 4, which is Top Gun Maverick, coming out July 2nd. One thing I still don't understand is why, after completing the Top Gun program, you'd want to be an instructor if you're the best fighter pilot on the planet. What? Your whole life, you want to fly and be the best and engage the enemy. And in the end, you know what, though? I'd rather teach. That makes no sense to me. But I've watched the first film. I watched the new trailer yesterday because I hadn't seen the Maverick trailer at all. Because I felt like, I need to see the first film before I watch a trailer, right? But I got to admit, it was a pretty good trailer when there was Harold Faltermeyer keys come in a little bit there, a little muted, a little drawn out, but they kind of got a Hans Zimmer treatment to them there. But it's still, it looks pretty good. The way they've shot this too, it seems to be an improvement over the original film. You really feel like you're in the cockpit with Cruise. And honestly, I haven't researched this, but I would not be surprised if Cruise learned how to fly a fighter jet for this film.
Yeah, he pulled out like an F-18, an F-14 from mothballs and learned how to freaking fly it.
He could afford to buy one. So I'm sure I'm watching him. He's likely like in a co-pilot seat or something, right? Mm-hmm. But I would not be surprised if that's actually him. It would really shock me at all. But it's my number 4. I'm curious to see how this thing is going to shake out. It could be just a galactic mess, but still, it could be a lot of fun and capture the 80s, which is something that I cling to so much given these difficult times, is how pure and wonderful the 80s were and all their craziness. So that's my number 4.
All right, so my number 4 is the upcoming film from Pixar named Luca. It's gotten a lot of buzz. It's supposed to be absolutely fantastic from the few people who have seen it. But I'll read the description of it here. Set in a beautiful seaside town in the Italian Riviera, Luca is a coming-of-age story about one young boy experiencing an unforgettable summer filled with gelato, pasta, and endless scooter rides. Luca shares these adventures with his newfound best friend, but all fun is threatened by a deeply held secret. Luca is a sea monster from another world that lives just below the surface. So I'm kind of hoping Luca is like this Cthulhu thing going on, So, but I'm really curious to see how this is. It's almost like a Pixar version of, I don't know if you ever caught up with the film Spring, which also takes place in the Italian Riviera. It's a very good film. Yeah, I'm very curious, and it's supposed to be absolutely fantastic. Comes out June 18th.
No. We'll have to check that out. My number 3 then is the newest film from Damien Chazelle, who gave us Whiplash and La La Land. It's Babylon, being released on Christmas Eve in 2021. He wrote and directed this one, and it features Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie, who stepped in after Emma Stone opted out of the film. Michael B. Jordan is in it as well. All that's known about it basically is that it's based during the golden age of Hollywood and then something. I really enjoyed Chazelle's work so far. Big fan of La La Land. Love Whiplash. I'm really curious to see what he does next, so it's my number 3.
Yeah, it's on my list too, so I'll go ahead and bring it forward and talk about it now. Somehow Chazelle has managed to make me love a musical in La La Land, which I never thought would be possible, but I absolutely adore La La Land, so I'm really on board for this. And even with my complaining about Mank, how I'm not all about the kind of Hollywood talking about how great Hollywood is and telling a Hollywood story.
True.
I'm still on board for it. I think the only thing I have heard about it is that it really focuses on the transition from the silent film area to the talkie area. So it's really the beginning of that golden age kind of thing. So I've been impressed with Chazelle's work so far. So I'm down to see it.
Yeah, I should say too, I think I left it out both times, but I think First Man is very good if you haven't seen it as well. A little underrated. Didn't seem to catch fire like his prior 2 films did. It's a little long and contemplative at times, but I think it's quite good if you haven't seen it. So then, Matt, I'm curious too, because I wonder if it's going to be like a weird adaptation, almost remake of Singing in the Rain, because that's what that movie's about too. Is the transition. Wait for him to sneak in a remake of that film. Though I don't know if I want to see Brad Pitt singing. I'll have to see. Gorlami. What else we have here? Number 2 for me then is The Tragedy of Macbeth. No firm release date, A24, coming out in 2021, but is the first film by Joel Coen not to feature his brother in the production of the movie. Features Denzel Washington as the titular Macbeth. Frances McDormand plays Lady Macbeth as well. And I'm going to be all over this thing. I'm curious what's going to happen with it. I'm not anticipating any kind of Fargo-esque turn of Macbeth, but I would love to see Denzel in this role. And to see, I'm curious what Joel does, on his own with this film. So, Tragedy of Macbeth is my number 2.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I had not heard of that, but I'm a big fan of the Coen brothers, so I'll be interested to see what a singular Coen can do by himself. All right, so speaking of filmmakers that I really love, I think I mentioned it last week, but I wanted to give it a little more attention this week. I am looking forward to an indeterminate film that's going to come out sometime in 2021, The French Dispatch by Wes Anderson. I'm interested in this one because it's kind of, the conceit is an overarching, a magazine called The French Dispatch, which is kind of a New Yorker sub that has 3 stories. So this is really an anthology film based off of the stories that were in the magazine. So I'm kind of curious what Anderson can do with that kind of those tight storytelling you need to do with those, whereas you don't maybe not have as much meandering as you do in a lot of his films. But honestly, even the Wes Anderson films I didn't love, I still thoroughly enjoyed. So he's a filmmaker that I'm always down to go see his films and his particular brand of quirkiness that he puts up on screen.
Yeah, that was basically my number 6. So that is a good one. So my number 1, Matt, then, I'm wondering if we have the same one.
Okay.
This is tough. So again, my criterion was that I would not use a film I mentioned last week. It had to be something new and different. And this is a film that actually is slated to come out in 2021. This was not delayed. This was always the case. And I need this film to come out, Matt. Even if we don't get a resolution to the series until 2022, I just need what has basically been possibly, outside of John Wick, the pinnacle of the action films genre of the past few years, and that is Mission Impossible 7, coming out on November 19th. Christian McQuarrie returns with Tom Cruise, Ving Rhames. Haley Atwell plays a role in the film. Her character is morally ambiguous. We're not sure who she is in the movie. We'll have to check that out. From what I understand, too, though, her and Cruise are a bit of an item right now. Okay. And a little gossip for you there, folks. But Fallout is just a great example of what an action film can be. I think Christopher McQuarrie is at the top of his game in that film, setting new heights, and I'm really curious to see what they do with Mission Impossible 7. Also, Henry Czerny returns as Kittredge, was from the very first Mission Impossible film. So then he was the IMF director. I'm curious if he'll still be so, because I thought that was Angela Bassett, transitioning from Alec Baldwin. So anyway, we'll have to check it out. But that's my number 1, November 19th. We'll see you there, Tom.
Yeah, I thought Angela Bassett, I thought she was the CIA, right? Or was she taking over the IMF?
I think at the end she took over IMF, I thought.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll have to see. So my number 1 then is, I kind of went back and forth about this. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I decided to just kind of say screw it and go with it. So I'm going to go with The Matrix 4. I am interested to see with Keanu, late stage Keanu, what we're going to get with this. I'm also really curious to see, now that the Wachowskis have transitioned into who they are, what that does to the storytelling. Now, I am hoping, I will be selfish, that it's a little more Matrix 1 as opposed to the convoluted, weird backstory mythology that they had in the other 2 Matrix films that kind of really deterred from what I wanted to see, which was cool action films. But, I have faith that we'll get something cool with all of these years in between.
That'll be interesting. I'm just not, I'm not as juiced for it because of those final 2 films. I'm very much in a wait and see approach with that one.
It's very fair. I understand.
So obviously stuff I had mentioned last week, Dune, No Time to Die, right? Justice League, maybe? And there's a new Sherlock film coming out. Robert Downey Jr., Jude Law, and Rachel McAdams are returning for a 3rd film. I'm still desperate to see, though I guess they announced it today, that Judas and the Black Messiah is getting an HBO Max release in February. So we'll be looking forward to that one. The Halloween Kills, I do have French Dispatch, Shang-Chi, Lords of the Ten Rings. There's a Resident Evil reboot coming out, which I had no idea about. Of course, Spider-Man 4 is going to come out near the end of the year, right? Melanie Laurent directs The Nightingale, which is about 2 sisters who struggle to survive and resist German occupation of France during World War II, featuring Dakota Fanning and Elle Fanning, which might be interesting. Red, White, and Water, which is a romantic drama with Jennifer Lawrence, and then one of my favorite, I think, next big guys, which is Brian Tyree Henry. Anytime he shows up in something, I am riveted. There's just, that guy has a charisma for the screen I just can't put my finger on at all. And then I think, Matt, something you're really looking forward to, The Souvenir Part 2. Remember how much you like The Souvenir?
Sure.
About the woman who puts up with the alcoholic guy, the French film?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Del Toro, Guillermo, our guy, is co-directing an animated version of Pinocchio, which is supposed to be coming
interesting. Very interesting.
And finally, Matt, it's supposedly coming out in 2021, though they're in pre-production, so I don't know. But that supposed Masters of the Universe film is coming out at some point.
Yeah, I did see that. I was going to put that on my list, just even though I know very little about it. But I saw that it was in pre-production and it's supposed to come out in like 3 months. So I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Did I say Godzilla vs Kong? Adam Wingard's Godzilla vs Kong too.
So what we didn't mention this week, or what you just didn't just mention, or what you mentioned last week. So I am curious to see The Little Things, starring Rami Malek, Denzel Washington, and Jared Leto. It's a crime drama coming out actually in January. So I'm curious to see what that's all about. Principals look good. I'm curious to see the Tom Hanks sci-fi film where he plays the last man on Earth with an android companion called BIOS. And I'm on the fence about this because I'm really curious if this got made. But The Many Saints of Newark, apparently produced and written by David Chase, and it's essentially a de facto Sopranos prequel where it's about a young Tony Soprano and their kind of rise of that New Jersey mafia. So I'm kind of curious to see what that's all about as well.
I've never seen that show.
No?
Nope. I've seen the first 2.5 seasons of The Wire.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff I haven't seen. So
yeah.
Good times.
Well, you've got HBO Max, no time like the present.
That's right. All right, so Matt, just a few words on Top Gun.
Yeah, and I do have one more thing after that.
I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
No, it's completely unrelated.
Okay.
I just wanted to get your opinion on the fact that MGM has put itself up for a $5 billion sale.
I'm a little nervous about that. That Disney is going to sweep in. I don't think they can really buy anybody anymore. So I think maybe Universal could come in, swoop in and buy them. Because obviously my big concern is the James Bond franchise.
Yeah.
So, but who knows? I may be writing it off after this film, depending on what happens, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think it'd be more. Yeah, you won't. Is maybe Amazon, because they certainly have the money. But I would dark horse Apple. Because Apple needs some content for their Apple TV real bad. So I could see them kind of getting in the fray and buying some of that stuff. That would be a big power move by them.
And they're just sitting on cash, piles of it, with nothing to do with it. So that is interesting. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't see Disney buying it. I think, with the state that they're in and not being able to make as much money back as they were hoping to because of this pandemic, I think they're going to be in a wait and see pattern.
Oh yeah, they took a big hit on Mulan. So yeah. Interesting. Yeah, no, I think you might be right. Apple would be an interesting choice, which would stink, but oh well, we'll see what happens. All right, Top Gun. Just quickly, bad script. We're just horrible script. I appreciate that Tom Cruise still had his slight unibrow back then. It's long gone now, but it's still slightly there in Top Gun, which I appreciated. It is clearly have one of the best soundtracks of the 80s. And one thing I didn't realize, too, is how sweaty a movie it is, Matt.
Oh, yeah.
All the time.
Everybody's listening.
And I appreciated its classic roll call at the end of the film. We're presented with the actors and their names and who perform them show up. That's just that's a good move right there. It's entertaining. I will give it that. It is ridiculous. It is over the top popcorn kind of fun, stupid, but still, it's a lot of fun. The emotional notes in that thing are purely manipulative and oversized. It's one of those where if Alien said, "Give me an example of just 80s movie excess," I would just present them with a copy of Top Gun on VHS. That really would be the way to go.
It is on the short list of if somebody said, "Give me the 5 films that represent the best and the worst of the 80s," this would count for both categories. I mean, it's ridiculous. What did you think of the volleyball scene?
Oh, it's great. Of course.
And was I right or was I right about the most awkward sex scene? With all that weird tongue stuff, it was just weird.
Yeah, well, it was. You know what's odd too is just I don't know if Berlin charged them $1 million to write "Take My Breath Away," but how it's just shoehorned in every time Kelly McGillis shows up. There's the keyboards of it or whatever. It starts to play this kind of muted version of it, and it slowly builds. We get a little more of the song and a little more of the song every time the two of them are together until the big scene. And it's "Take My Breath." It's blasting, it's all there. But it's so hammered into the film that it's it's disrupting. It's it's startling every time it happens. It's so badly, just stapled into that movie. I love that song too, but it is rough. And the whole film is like that in a way. It's just as big as possible. Mm-hmm. I will say, so this is gonna be like a mini Great Unwatched. I bought this on 4K for $10.
Oh wow,
the disc. So I'd never seen it. It's like a $10 for the 4K version of Top Gun. I'm not gonna go wrong with that, right?
Right.
And it wasn't. It was worth every penny. The 4K presentation on that disc is startling. It is beautiful to watch. Very clear. The sound design, though, Matt, I mean, is deafening, particularly when the jets and stuff. Oh, yeah. The Mrs. First Run wasn't home, so I was able to really crank it up. The dog had to leave the room. It was really that intense. So, Well, if you haven't seen Top Gun, or which I'm assuming you have, everybody's cooler than me. But if you're leaning towards upgrading to the 4K set, you can get it, especially for that price. Don't even think twice about it. It was well worth the buy.
There you go. All right, fantastic.
So I think I would give Top Gun, Matt, in some ways, today all the way. But it's really, I think, a C+ movie. It's not very good. It isn't. It's beautiful in its excess.
Yeah, I hear you.
I can't wait to hear.
Well, I'm good. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I enjoyed it. Yeah. I can't wait to hear your turn of One Cut of the Dead and our 2023 wrap-up show.
It'll be the last thing. When we decide to, put up the chairs and turn on the light in the show, that's what I'll give my update on First Cut of the Dead.
That'll be your going away present. That'll be good. That'll be a nice way to go out. That's a good idea. So in the meantime, next week, Matt, we'll be discussing Wonder Woman 1984. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the marathon of banned films thankfully comes to a close with Sallow, a film I have seen. We've both seen it, right?
I've never seen Sallow. No.
Oh, boy. Okay. So that's going to be a trip for you. It's a great way to spend your holiday weekend. In the meantime, check us out on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Do a search for The First Run. Scroll. Eventually you will find us. Go over to Apple Podcasts. Give us a review. It'll help other people find the show, and we will read it on the air. And that's it, Matt. So why don't we go ahead? Everybody have a great holiday, whatever it is you celebrate. Take care of yourselves. Have fun. And we will see you all again soon. Take care.
Skeletor to King Randor! Skeletor to King Randor! Come in, you royal boob!